Hey folks, Randy here, Dulin Cut Trim. I have a little tip for you that if you have the stomach for it, will really help your business and really help you head off problems in the future. And it does require at least some level of organization and level-headedness. And that idea is to start keeping track of customer complaints. That's something I started doing this year. I track every complaint that I get. And the way I do it is I write down the name of the customer that complained, the date, what their complaint was, and what I did to address it. At this point in the season, I've gotten 4 complaints. 3 of them were lawn mowing related, and 1 was landscape related. And so what I've done is I've created a spreadsheet in my system, and I track all that, and I look for patterns. So I have 1 complaint, the landscape complaint. In my opinion, the customer had an unreasonable expectation of what was going to be done on their property, and as a result, they were upset about how much the final product cost. It was a job that gets priced by the man hour, and so you don't actually have a set amount until the end of the job. And so their complaints really, to me, seem to stem from the fact that they were not properly educated on the pricing and how that pricing works. And so while I can just dismiss their complaints, what I actually am doing as a result of that complaint is I'm taking it upon myself to make sure I'm educating my customers so that they can make as educated a decision as possible. Even though I wrote it out in my system, or in the quote, what the pricing was and how it worked, clearly I didn't do a good enough job educating my customer on how my pricing system worked. So that's something I can deal with in the future and make sure I'm giving the appropriate education to those customers so I don't have that problem in the future. I had another customer who complained that I didn't move enough items on her yard. And while I did express to her that, and I had expressed beforehand, that it was up to the technician, which would be me, what he did or didn't move, she felt like I was overly cautious in what I decided not to move and was unhappy about that. I was able to discuss that with her, and we still have her contract, and I'm supposed to mow it. I believe I mow it again next week. And then my last 2 mowing complaints actually both came from the same customer. And in those situations, honestly, it's a situation where the guy wants his lawn cut every 2 weeks, but his grass cuts so fast that his grass grows so fast that in order for his lawn to look good, it needs to be cut weekly. He complained about that and fussed about, wasn't happy, and ultimately discontinued service and is going to work with someone else. But, I can take from his complaint and look at it and see what I can do in the future. And honestly, he's not the only customer that I think is having that issue. The other customers haven't complained, but everybody's grass is growing out of control right now. And so what I need to do to be proactive in this kinds of situations is I need to set up a form, or a generic template email that I can send to bi-weekly customers saying, hey, your grass is growing really fast, you may want to consider weekly, here's the reasons why, our pricing structure is based on mowing your lawn once per service visit, yada yada yada. And so that's something I can do to try and head off those kinds of problems in the future. So whenever a customer complains, I don't care if it's a reasonable complaint or not, take the time to document what they're saying, because if you have multiple customers complaining about the same thing, even if technically you're right, who cares if you don't have their business, you know? So I actually had to deal with that earlier this spring when I was sending out my lawn maintenance quotes. Customers were having a difficult time finding the username and password to log in to, you know, pay their bill. I mean, to put their credit card on file. I thought it was very obvious that where they needed to look for that. It said it right in the confirmation email. It was very clear to me, and honestly, it was very clear to a lot of my customers that were able to do it no problem. But there were enough customers that contacted me saying they couldn't figure it out, that even though I had done what I needed to do to make it easy for them, I hadn't made it easy enough. And so I had to change the way I handled that confirmation process and giving them the information they needed so that I could better service my customers. Even though what I was doing was good enough, I still needed to do better. And I was able to handle that by listening to the feedback I was getting from my customers, both positive and negative. So keep that in mind, guys. Take the time to actually track your complaints, hear what your customers have to say, and use that information to make your business better. I'm telling you, man, it pays dividends. If that's the proper use of the word dividends. I don't know. I cut grass for a living. I don't invest, assuming that's what dividends is in reference to. All right, I'm done. All right, have a good one, guys.